5. It is 6 p.m. This is our town council meeting. We are in the town council chambers at 30 Main Street in Freeport. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. All right, and so before we move on to the rest of our agenda, we have a special occasion this evening. As many folks know and are here tonight, have completed the inaugural Civics 101 program from RSU 5 Community Programs. Hopefully this is the first class of many. So I would like to welcome Peter Wagner to come up, and we will hold a graduation ceremony tonight.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. My name is Peter Wagner, and I'm a Freeport resident, and I'm also the director of RSU 5 Community Programs. Among the many things that we do in our office, we offer a wide range of enrichment programming for the community. That's Freeport and Durham and Pownell, of course. And among the many local partner organizations with which we collaborate, this spring we had the pleasure of teaming up with the town of Freeport to offer the inaugural Civics 101 class. Before coming to work in Freeport, I spent about 20 years in higher education, alumni, and development, and we would regularly take part in professional conferences run by a national organization called CASE, and that's C-A-S-E. In reality, that acronym stands for the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education, but for regular attendees, it was known as CASE, Come and Steal Everything. The lesson being learned that in the world of nonprofits, there's rarely an idea that's so precious that it can't be stolen and applied to your own constituents. And it was in that spirit that I brought the idea for Civics 101 from my previous town of residence, Davidson, North Carolina, whose town hall has offered a wildly popular class by the same name multiple times a year for more than 2 decades. I've been on this job for 7 or 8 years now. I've wanted to do it since the very first day that I was here, and we finally got to it this year. I'm very, very excited. And so thank goodness for that timely plagiarism, because it helped bring together this first group of 20 Civics 101 students in Freeport, many of whom are here this evening. We started our program on March 10th, and over 6 sessions we heard from the leaders and decision makers about how they do their jobs, what they most wish residents knew about their departments, and what makes them most proud and excited about the work that they do. I won't attempt to speak for our students, but I'll tell you that from the perspective of this Freeport resident, it was a phenomenal experience. I walked away from the program impressed and surprised by the things I learned, and more than anything, proud of the individuals who work so hard to make this wonderful town as great as it can be. Our students raved about the presentations and expressed an enhanced connection with their town. After one of our sessions early on in the set of 6, one of our students said, "I'm falling in love with Freeport in a whole new way because of this class." And I mean, what more could any of us have hoped for other than that sort of reaction? And that's because of the people that we met, the employees of this town office. So on behalf of the students, I offer sincere thanks to Sophie and Joanna, who covered Government 101, Winter and Tom, who talked to us about community services along with a tour of the library, which was fantastic, Min and Jessica, who discussed administration, Nate, Bob, and Glenn, who offered an on-site look at public safety, Caroline and Dan, who covered committees, and Earl and Brett, who presented on public services. They were all lovely and engaging hosts and really generous with their time. And to the students, I'd like to express how grateful I am for your enthusiasm, curiosity, and high spirit during our time together. It was really a pleasure spending time with all of you over these last few weeks. And if I may share one more bit of information before the students are recognized, I'll let you know that we're likely to grow this program in the near future. At the end of this month, I think May 27th, I'll be meeting with the Pownell Select Board to further their interest in offering a program of their own. And Durham has also indicated that they may do the same. So as part of my role with RSU 5, trying to do similar programs in each of the towns is a priority, and I'm really excited that they're interested as well. And then here in Freeport, through the course of the sessions that we had together, we talked about we talked about doing the class again with a similar lineup. And we'd also like to consider, for instance, a 102 class on local history, or a 201 class on local businesses, or a 202 class on area nonprofits, and give them a chance to show off what they do and get some exposure. So I really look forward to continuing our partnership and serving our community the best we can. And so thank you to the town council and for Sophie and everyone here at Town Hall for being really supportive of this from the first day. And so now, along with Joanna and Sophie, I'd like to recognize our students. And again, I wish I'd had the foresight to say, like, okay, the next town council meeting after we end is on May 6th. So a number of them couldn't be here tonight, but the students that we had, Sandra Barry. Sandra here? Oh, there you are, Sandra. Thank you so much. Lovely parting gift. Lovely.
We're all going to line up because I'm not standing up here by myself.
Perfect, yes. Megan Best. Oh, there she is.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara Caldwell. Erin Covey-Smith. Erin is not with us this evening, okay. Liz Dolce, I think, is also, oh, there she is. She's here. Kelly Delaney. Stephanie Joy. Christy and Greg Klein. Oh, there's Christy. You could bring those over. Jessica Marchese. Jessica, yeah. Thank you. Dick and Tony Merrick. Michelle Milway. Cassie Pendergrast. Cassie's not here this evening, okay. Rhonda Prime. James Reinertson, I think he's at a school event this evening. Chandra Robbins. That might be it. Ashley Shoemaker. Oh, there she is, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Janice Stroud. Now I think we might have run through everybody. Sarah Thomas. And I think that is it. Yes. All right. Thank you all so much. Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for doing this.
Just want to thank you all for. Oh. And so we have one more certificate to offer this evening. Don't go too far, Peter. So I first met Peter. Yeah, you guys can take a seat. Feel free. So I first met Peter when I was deciding to run for town council, and pretty much everybody I talked to was like, you have to meet Peter. You have to meet him. And as soon as I did, it became very clear why. Peter is a cornerstone of our community who always has a growth mindset and is always thinking about creative ways to get people together and to feel empowered. I was so delighted to see this happen this year. I can't wait for many more. So thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all. All right. All right, and we will move on now to our second order of business. Roll call, we will see who is here. Counselor Egan?
Here.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Present.
Counselor Lawrence?
Here.
Counselor Pilch?
Here.
Counselor Smith?
Present.
Counselor Brown?
Here.
Yep, he is here on Zoom, and Counselor Benoit is here and present. All right, our third order of business is to waive the reading and accept as printed the April 15th meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Oh, I have to do roll call. Thank you, Vice Chair. We will be doing roll call votes tonight because we have Counselor Brown on Zoom. So Counselor Egan?
Yes.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence?
Here. Yep.
Counselor Pilch?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, moving on to our next order of business is announcements. I don't think I have any official announcements today. Great. I will make a quick announcement that we are on May 18th having a cookout with council. That will be at Memorial Park from noon to 2. Any other announcements?
I'll just share that this whole month of May, Meeting House Arts is hosting programs related to the working waterfront here in Freeport. That's a part of their year-long focus on the working waterfront connected to the Pinkies exhibit that's right out front here in Town Hall. But there is an exhibit in the gallery there that opened last Thursday and is up through this coming Sunday, which I encourage you to see on the history of the working waterfront here in Freeport and what it looks like now. I'd also encourage you to check out their Thursday evening programs for the next few weeks, which will include a panel on working waterfront fishing families over the multi-generations of fishing here in Freeport, as well as other working waterfront industries, and some additional programs in subsequent weeks. So be sure and check that out this month.
Great. Any other announcements? All right. We will move on to information exchange. This is a time for counselors to share updates on constituent conversations, committees, anything of the sort. Anything from the counselors today? Counselor Pilch.
I just want to report that the Police Advisory Committee had met on the 28th, a couple of Mondays ago. And I said I would bring back a couple of thoughts from the committee. One is that there was strong support for the staffing for the police department. They were concerned about the welfare of the officers, the amount of overtime, things like that. So they strongly supported the budget request as it is. And that they intend to focus on community awareness and communications throughout the year, and hope to provide some reports to the council about statistics and all the activities that the police department gets up to. So very positive meeting.
I attended a neighborhood meeting about a week and a half ago here in council chambers, hosted by Earl Gibson, our Director of Public Works. So I just want to thank him for hosting that. It was related to the planned reconstruction of the very beginning of Flying Point Road, from basically the Mass Landing Bridge up to just before Pleasant Hill Road. So that was a really informative and engaging meeting with people who live right along that stretch in that neighborhood. That, of course, will affect a lot more people in town in the Pleasant Hill, Flying Point, Wolf's Neck area once we get to that. It's not actually happening until either this fall or next spring, but it was a really good opportunity for folks whose property fronts on Flying Point Road, and Earl was very responsive to questions and feedback about drainage and pavement and all kinds of things related to that project, which is coming up in this year's budget.
We also had our monthly coffee with council yesterday. We met with Dan Freund, had a great conversation with him. Also, tomorrow, there is the RSU 5 budget Q&A at the Freeport High School right before the regular meeting. That's from 6 to 6:30. So encourage folks to attend if they have questions about the school budget. Anything else from council? Okay. So we'll move on to our town manager's report.
Thought that was going to be at the next meeting, but
Okay, never mind, never mind.
All right.
Just a few items. First, taxes, second half of taxes are due on May 15th. Well, at least until today, not sure what will happen after today, but we had a very high fire danger. Just to let you know that the fire department responded to 2 wildland fires in Freeport. Both of them stopped pretty quickly, relatively speaking. And then also last week, we had a structure fire that we assisted in Brunswick. Just to let people know, if you haven't already seen, that the Cousins River Bridge on 295 northbound will be shut down on the 13th and the 14th overnight. They're going to detour traffic up Route 1 to exit 20, and they say the bridge will be open back up by 6 a.m. on both days. We did receive confirmation that that the town was awarded a community resilience grant. It was partially funded, so we had requested $50,000. They will be providing us with $10,000 to assist with the finishing up the emergency management plan, holding stakeholder tabletop exercises to practice the plan, and creating educational material that would then go out to the public. The other funds were to supply the Freeport Community Library with a generator to make it a warming and cooling center for us. But the generator ran on fossil fuels, so they kicked it out, which I guess makes sense. I've received some questions or comments about street sweeping. So the street sweeper has been out, very active, doing its job. I think some folks are concerned that we're spending a lot of time and energy sweeping the streets, and I just want to make sure that we let people know that is, while it looks great, the primary purpose for the street sweeper is actually to comply with our municipal separated storm sewer system permit, also affectionately known as the MS4 permit, which is, while it's issued by the state of Maine, it's a delegated authority, so it's actually a federal permit that we have to comply with. You will see the street sweeper out on a regular basis to make sure that we collect as much of the debris before it makes its way into drainage, catch basins, and ditches. The work has started on the Public Works facility renovation, so that was that minor interior renovation that took us a while to come in within a budget, then to create the budget and get it working. I'm excited, we'll be very excited when we have actual space for people to eat their lunch, not on top of each other, which will be great. So Earl and I have we have news that is probably, Earl and I have news, and that is that a resident brought to our attention some concerns with accessible parking at the town wharf. So we looked into that. We called in some reinforcements for people that know more than we do. We looked at all of the parking that's down there and the requirements, and determined that we need 2 parking spaces for the lot that is there because of the way it is contiguous to more than 25 spaces, and that it really requires a van access in the middle. So what we really need is accessible spot, an access area, and another accessible spot. So there will be, it's going to be restriped down there to accurately reflect accessible spots and non-accessible spots. But it will go from one not really legal accessible spot to two legal accessible spots. There was some conversation at a council during, I think, at the capital plan discussion with council about the $1 million project with GP funds, so that would be the Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation System funds of $90,000, leveraging $900,000 of town money to do upgrades to the Route 1 corridor, the mast arms, that kind of stuff. So questions were raised about that, which caused us to go back and dig further into the plans. And what we discovered in the plans is that it was very conceptual, which led us to have conversations with GP. And what we're going to do is to provide them with a letter to essentially give back the $90,000, knowing that we will be eligible to reapply once we have projects in the future. So my recommendation, my hope is that council will keep the placeholder of $300,000 over 3 years, because we're going to need that to match ultimately what we end up doing on the Route 1 corridor. But just a great example of what working together kind of helps us identify. The final piece is we're hoping to have the Planning Partnership Initiative kickoff happen in June, when, if you agree to the Stantec contract that's in the background material, that kickoff would actually start with a community meeting that has Jeff Speck come in and give a conversation about walkable village environments. I think it would be great. The issue we're running into is the only time it looks like they're available in June, which gets us before the summer really starts and doesn't delay the implementation of the project, is June 17th, which is a council night. We are hoping that council might consider bumping the June 17th meeting to June 24th, so that we could have the kickoff meeting on the 17th when Stantec is here and Jeff Speck is here, and then the following week we would do, among other things, adopt a budget, if that works.
That's a pretty tight time frame for Jessica, if there are any edits to the budget on the 24th. Right? It has to take effect a week
Yeah.
later on July 1?
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
She's really good, but
She's
that's
really good.
not
She
giving
is-
her a lot of time.
She is really, really good, because my hunch is that council will have the public hearing on the 3rd, and then we have the 10th for
Workshop
a
on the 10th, right.
workshop.
Okay, I forgot about
So
that.
my hunch is that there wouldn't be any huge moving parts, but council always has the prerogative to do what it would like.
Well,
So that is kind of what skate park. Steve is under the weather, and he's really the one that is spearheading this, but we have 2 skate park projects kind of in the works at the same time. One is the pop-up or the temporary skate park that's been going on down at Depot Street for the last many years, several years. And staff and I have kind of been spearheading that project. There are concerns that were raised by NEPRA and Amtrak about the location of the pop-up park. We also heard from residents who are not comfortable with the noise and other elements around that. So we have been on a mission to try to identify another temporary pop-up park location. My hope is that we can have a conversation with the temporary pop-up park people and the permanent pop-up park people who, we have that scheduled for next week to have more of a sense of, do we have some synergy? The temporary location that we're looking at would be in the Howard Place parking lot behind the American Eagle, kind of adjacent to where the ball field is. It would take up, it's about 3,500 square feet. It would take up, I think, 8 parking spots. We're still doing some due diligence on that. But I have some concerns and have a call out to our insurance company just about the elements that we're using that were built out of wood and don't have a spec. Want to just make sure we've got coverage if somebody gets hurt with that. But we're going to meet with the temporary pop-up park people and see kind of where we are with all of that. My hope is that at the June 20th meeting, we will, if we're going to have a pop-up park this year, we would bring that back to council to have a discussion of the location and the terms of use. Feel like this isn't just a pro forma staff sign off on it this year. I think we need to kind of have that discussion. The permanent park has been discussed a couple of times at municipal facilities. Councilor Brown is the liaison to the permanent park. He's been doing a lot of work, walking the town with folks, talking about potential locations. I think we want to keep gathering that information. Kind of one of the locations that they're looking at is not on town-owned property, so I think we're trying to figure out how we would approach that and what would happen there. But it's ongoing, and a lot of work is happening by community members to try to have a skate park somewhere in Freeport's downtown.
I'll go easy. On the temporary park, some of the concerns that were raised, they were raised by the neighbors, but they're not specific to the neighbors. And I think they're addressable, right? So things like, is there any, I don't want to say supervision 24/7, but is there somebody willing to kind of swing around at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock, whenever time we decide the park should close, to encourage people to be on their way, or to make sure that the trash is being picked up, or the wood structures are being repaired? It seems like there hasn't been a lot of oversight, and nobody was really sure who is responsible for which piece of that. So wherever it winds up going, and if it's back at the train station under the current usage of the Downeaster, it seems like we can spare those 8 spaces. But wherever it goes, I think those things should be addressed. And then I don't know if the permanent skate park is also looking at Howard Place or not. But either way, the spaces there are adjacent to the ball field. So we should wait till after baseball season if we're going to disrupt parking in that area. But long term, we have no stands for the baseball field. There's nowhere to sit and watch the game. So being directly adjacent to that and being elevated, it might be interesting if there was something more permanent to have some stands be considered as something that might be worked into that, if that's a possibility. So I'll just float that out. That's all.
So I just want to clarify that the concerns around the pop-up park that the Downeaster identified were not related to the parking spots. It was related to train safety. Bringing trains and teenagers.
Councilor Egan?
I may have lost track, but I think the Howard Place would be the fourth location that we have, quote unquote, tried to find a place for the skate park. The euphemism, third time's a charm, we missed that one. I really hope we can do this. I don't know how much longer a volunteer group that has philanthropic backing and a mindset to give a skate park to the town is going to sustain us saying, oh yeah, we'd like it here. No, not here, but no, that's not going to be here. So I really hope we can make this work, and I think even if the quote-unquote donation of the skate park does require some staff time and maybe even a little bit of a capital budget planning. I think it's incredibly important to make it happen and to demonstrate that the community here is representing everybody, including the teenagers who need a place to go skating.
So,
I firmly believe we need to make this happen.
so I hear that, which is why staff is giving quite a bit of time here, happily. I guess the thing I would say is this is the first time that, at least that when I've been here, that staff and this group are working in concert and to identify a place. And I think that's the.
It's probably due to your leadership, Sophie, so thank you.
I think that Counselor Brown is doing a great job of working with them to understand what their rubric is and to try to identify places. And I think the goal was to come back to the Municipal Facilities Committee with an actual location that would work, as opposed to, I think it might, or this looks good. But yes, I hear you, Counselor Egan, which is why I'm working hard.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming these updates and more will be coming to municipal facilities on Monday, which is when we'll talk about that. And one thing, Dan, in terms of your question about security, it is something we've talked about with this location, and Chief Goodman's been in communication, I believe, with the security that circulates regularly through that parking lot and would provide more oversight, I would say, than what was down at the train station, where there's not really a reason to circulate down there.
And I just want to say, I think we'll also learn a lot as we move along. So the biggest hurdle is finding a location, and I think we're working hard to make sure it's not just a thanks for your offer, go find a place, just kidding, not there, over again. And I think some of the concerns that you're raising, Dan, we'll figure out how to best address them too as we go. It'll be iterative for sure. But I just want to say thank you to staff for really taking this on.
I am so glad to have an economic development person to help lead the community effort.
I also want to, is there anything else on your report? So do you want an official nod that June 24th, we'll want to switch from the 17th to the 24th?
I think if people are prepared to give a nod, that's great. If you need, we can ask Chris to send something out, but I just want to give you the heads up as to the why.
Works for me.
Works for you? I'd say it works.
All right. Councilor Brown, does that work for you? Yes. Okay, we're getting a thumbs up. So I think you are good to move that. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
All right. Any other questions for the manager? All right, so we'll move on to public comment period part 1. So this is limited to folks who are here in person. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And do we still have our sign-up sheet?
It was back. So we're a little bit discombobulated today because Chris went to a training and got educated. She's going to bring it back to us. But we just don't quite know what to do without Chris here. So I'm not 100% sure if the sign-up sheet is back there.
Yes, it is. So we do have a sign-up sheet, which if we're not able to give folks answer in person, you can make sure you leave your information on the sign-up sheet so we can follow up. So, all right, so we will open public comment. If anybody would like to give a comment, they can walk up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Dan Winship, 16 Prout Road. I wanted to bring awareness to something that most people probably do not understand or even realize that's out there. Up past your parents' house, a mountain lion was spotted. Now, I've actually stumbled across tracks, and I am currently going to be working on getting photos of this animal. But people at these places where they go out and walk these trails need to be alert that, number one, you don't run. You stand there and it will leave. Leave your ankle biters at home. And don't bring a steak with you.
Can you give a more specific, I don't know who you pointed to and whose house, so where are you talking
Eric.
about?
Past Route
Up past Eric's house.
So
Route 1 North?
Yes.
Route 1 North, which would be quite close to the northernmost Freeport Conservation Trust property.
Yes, there's a trail right there, and that's exactly where that animal was spotted.
Wow.
So there should be a letter or something posted there so people know, be aware. Because if they stumble across this den, they might regret it.
Right.
You know, so there's actually been spotted more than once that I know of. And I've heard about the animal and thought it was, yeah, sure. But it actually ran through my father's driveway after a fox. So it will chase small prey.
Wow. I'm on that trail quite a bit, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, this print that I found was very clear. It left minutes before I got there. This print would have been full of water if it would have been any longer. So this animal is out there, and people need to be aware that you got to watch out.
Thank you, Dan. If you do get a picture, send it along.
Yes, oh, I will.
Yeah. All right, anybody else who would like to speak? All right. So we will move on from public comment. All right, moving on to our new business part of the agenda, item 49-29. This is to consider action relative to adopting the consent agenda. Councillor Smith, will you read the be ordered?
Be it ordered that the May 6, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
All right, any questions or thoughts on the consent agenda before we vote?
Probably for you, Sophie. Can you explain what goes into the veterans' income for the cemeteries versus the investment income? I mean, what does it fund?
So here comes our wonderful finance director who put this on the agenda.
Mid-bite, so sorry.
I went to say hello and I breathed in a flake or something. I'm not sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is just the standard item before you to set the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I on the wrong one?
Veterans' income versus investment income. I have an inkling, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, the veteran income is what we allocate in the budget per grave. Sorry.
Which
I
is
apologize.
which is statutory, correct?
That we take care of veteran graves, not necessarily by the amount, but
Okay.
that veteran graves are taken care of. And then the interest income is what's been earned in the trust, that's dispersible based on what's been earned.
But are there different expenses that are paid out of those buckets, or does it matter?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry?
Well, what does the income go to support? Does it matter which category, like, is mowing?
It just comes out of
come out
two
of
different, for us, it just comes out of two different accounts. So the income on the interest that is one of the columns comes from the actual trust. So we pay that out of the trust. The amount that we pay for the veteran allotment comes out of the town budget. So we appropriate out of one of the general fund accounts monies to support maintenance of veteran cemeteries that have veteran graves.
But we don't get any kind of accounting back from these private cemeteries.
No, they get
as a-
one check for the total amount,
And
and
the
what they
expect-
do with it is on them to maintain in, I would assume, I'll use the phrase in good faith, the intent.
I guess the reason for my question is because we oftentimes hear there's not enough money to support the activities that are needed at the cemeteries. And I'm curious, it seems like that's a decent amount to be able to do, but I also don't know what goes into the maintenance and upkeep. So it's hard to put this in context.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion sometimes between what is statutorily required which is that veteran graves are maintained. But I think in a lot of cases, it's the cemetery as a whole that, ends up getting obviously maintained. You're not just going to mow a veteran grave. So sometimes, depending on the makeup in that regard, it can be difficult with that allotment to do everything. I mean, landscaping work can be pretty pricey. So, yeah, where you have discretion with this, if that's what you're looking for, is to budget to increase the per grave allotment.
So our responsibility, if we have you're going to get this whole memo in a few weeks, but if it's a public cemetery, we have certain responsibilities in the public cemetery. The grass can only get so high, and it has to be maintained to a certain degree. Every veteran grave that we are aware of in the whole town, whether it's public or private, has to be marked and maintained, has to be maintained from May 30th Memorial Day to September 30th. What makes it unique is these are fairly new laws, relatively in the last 20 years. And it always used to be private cemeteries they managed things on their own, and we managed public cemeteries. So the town is the trustee to perpetual care funds that have been allocated to each private cemetery. And I don't know how they were initially allocated, whether it's when they came in and we were holding their money, everybody had a certain percentage. But the allocation of perpetual care funds to outside entities should only be the growth. We should be maintaining the principal. So I know that there was a time when they were digging into the principal, which meant that we had to shrink the payments even more to make that up when people discovered it was not being done right. You have heard from people who are maintaining private cemeteries that it's not enough to get the work done. I think that might be a worthwhile discussion to maybe try to bring these custodians in one place, understand what they are, what the costs are, be able to pull that together along with the information we already have for you coming about Dunning Cemetery, which the request was made that we would take that over as a public cemetery. And that will outline in 2 long pages what your responsibilities would be.
Great. I just can't help but think that there's probably some economies to be had in terms of one overarching contract for mowing or something like that. I mean, it seems like there should be enough money based on what's here. But again, without knowing what needs to go into it and how we're procuring those services, it's hard to know.
It's tough too, because some of these cemeteries might be quite small and managed oftentimes generationally, where you're not paying for a mowing contract. Your family has always mowed it, taken care of it.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the consent agenda?
I just have one related to the 5K. The 5K route, which is pretty well established and marked, and that's why everyone uses it, basically starts on Depot Street right before the JAG onto Mill Street and then continues onto the rest of Depot Street. That road closure often creates some confusion, and I just want to flag that for the police chief, which I will bring this up at every 5K, because there is often confusion and lack of awareness that street is going to be closed for several hours that day. So I just want to flag that is appropriately marked and notified for folks that are trying to get through to those parking lots.
So if that is the case, I will let the chief know. I know that he is trying very hard to strongly recommend a different 5K route that only takes 2 officers and doesn't close traffic for the length of time. I'm not sure if he will be successful, but he tries real hard.
As somebody who runs that 5K route often, that would be great because those hills are awful. There you go. All right.
Delta Dental is picking up the cost for the detail, right?
Great. And I also do want to call out quickly the resignation of Todd Yankee from the Project Review Board. I just want to take a moment to just thank him. He's not here, but to thank him for his time and expertise on that board for several years.
Can I just clarify for folks that Todd is not stepping away from service with the town? Our attorney highlighted for us a potential conflict having somebody serve on both coastal waters and project review. Todd's understanding of the process and findings and how to manage applications is really invaluable on coastal waters, and he has agreed to continue serving the town there, which we really appreciate.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, so we'll do our roll call vote. Councillor Egan?
Yes.
Councillor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Councillor Lawrence?
Yes.
Councillor Pilch?
Yes.
Councillor Smith?
Aye.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
And Councillor Benoit votes yes. All right, moving on. Moving on to item 50-25. So this is our public hearing for the proposed tax increment financing district and credit enhancement agreement. I believe we had Brett who would provide some background before we open up the hearing. And Matt Peters as well.
Should I get in a microphone?
Yeah, we will. Good evening. I'm Brett Richardson, Development Director with the Town of Freeport, and I'm excited to be here again with Matt Peters talking about the Varney Heights here apartments, affordable housing tax increment financing district. We talked about this a couple meetings ago. This public hearing, and we're here tonight to actually provide more information before the public has a chance to weigh in. So Varney Heights, 42 units, 55 plus affordable housing project, walkable downtown, located in a designated growth area in the Dog Bone. Importantly, it's received the PRB approval in November of 2024. And from a town perspective, this is truly but for financing, which means the project won't happen but for town support and the contribution. It's also important to note that Varney Heights will leverage about 4 hours or more in outside funding for every dollar in town funding to have 4 units. Quick leverage there for town. It's important to note as well that the fiscal impact analysis that GP-COG provided suggests that this project, the revenues from it, will not only cover the cost to serve the units there, the new residents, but generate about half of that new revenue, which will flow to the town coffers for other type of uses, for example, a TIF to support the project. It's also important to note that the application has been reviewed by Maine Housing and vetted as consistent with state policy. So if we approve it here at Town Hall, the state is likely to improve it as well. This project is consistent with Freeport's historical use of TIF districts, affordable housing, along with public infrastructure and business expansion has been used over the years to great success in town. And also, the town is well below the state caps on land and value, so there's plenty of room there. From a TIF standpoint, we're looking at a term of 30 years. It's going to be valued at about $4 million, generates $53,000 a year in new tax revenues. And so we're looking to split that roughly 50-50 with the project to make it happen. It'll stay affordable for at least 45 years, well beyond the town's TIF investment. And then the town's also expected to gain $123,000 over the course of the term in tax shift benefits. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, and Matt can give us a better sense of the project itself.
So we did give a pretty good overview last time we were here, but for the benefit of the public, we'll provide another overview. So the development is being developed by Freeport Housing Trust, which is a nonprofit organization based in Freeport. It's been around for over 35 years, and we're doing the development in conjunction with a co-developer, Tim Gooch, who has done some development over the last 25 years throughout Maine, mostly in the Augusta area. We are developing a 42-unit building, and we've done this before. So Freeport currently owns 8 properties around town, 183 apartments, and most recently did an acquisition rehab of Quarry Ridge, in which we were able to receive a TIF from the town to support that project as well. The last new construction that the Freeport Housing Trust completed of scale is Oakleaf 2, which was another 55-plus property, which is on the same site as Oakleaf Terrace, and that was 25 apartments. And that happened in 2012. So it's been a while, and it'll be nice to get something started and online in the next couple of years. So here's a site schematic. So Varney Road is at the top, and if you drive out Varney Road to the left, you get to Route 1, where Antonia is, and there's Bath Savings is down to the right, Shaw's is off to the left. It's pretty central property within walking distance of Breeze stops. It's one building, 3 stories. There'll be 43 parking spaces, I believe, with over half a dozen accessible parking spaces. Additional, these are images of the exterior of the building. Again, looks similar to Oakleaf 2 if you've driven by that or seen that around town. The inside of the building is, we keep it very simple. We try to use age-friendly design when possible, so contrasting colors and proper chairs and all kinds of different things, as well as the community room is quite large and has a kitchenette, and will be large enough to so that everybody can be in one place at one time from the community. There'll also be on-site washers and dryers available for laundry, and garden beds. And one thing you guys have recently talked about building codes, and so you're well aware of the update in the building code. But even with the town keeping the current stretch code, I asked our architects, and they said very clearly, yes, we would meet that hands down. There wasn't anything we had to change with our building. So our design was already at a level that exceeds typical building standards for ventilation, heating and cooling, and energy efficiency. So it's 42 apartments. 4 of them will be 2-bedroom, and the balance, 38, will be 1-bedroom. And it's designed to serve a pretty big range of households' income levels. It's from, I think, can you go back one more slide? So from $27,000 a year to up to $70,000 a year. So it's a pretty big range of income diversity within the building. Next slide. This is the project budget. We have been able to secure all of our financing partners, and we've submitted our budget to Maine Housing. And so, if the town does approve the TIF tonight, we hope to close within 90 days. And so we do have our final construction numbers. We have our operating budgets, and we'll be using Bath Savings as our construction lender, and Maine Housing will be the permanent loan lender on the project. So just to clarify, the use of the TIF is so that we can borrow more money, so that we can pay for all of the costs associated with the building. As it stands, Freeport Housing Trust is putting in our own resources, which doesn't normally happen on these types of low-income housing projects. And so we're doing that because we want to see the building happen, but it's also indicative of the gaps that we've experienced as construction prices have gone up and equity pricing has gone down since there's higher interest rates than when we started the project 2 years ago, building out the pro forma. So the town's TIF is very much needed, and it's been in our budget from the very beginning as well. I think that's it. So if there's any questions, comments.
Councilor Egan?
Thanks, Matt. Do you have just off the top of your head, I'm just curious what the delta is in terms of the additional debt that the TIF structure allows you to take on?
I believe it's about 400,000. If you take how much is I think it's 27,000, and then divide that by 0.06.
Yeah.
About.
Okay. I just wanted to get a scale of reference.
Yep.
I just want to highlight something too, that my understanding is that the financing that you and the co-developer have assembled here is competitive financing. Not only the debt, and certainly the equity investor has options of which projects they can pick, so they're you have to lure in the equity investor as well. But the credits themselves are highly competitive. Is that true?
Correct. Yeah.
And one of the scoring elements in order to be competitive is what is the local municipality doing in the project?
Correct. Yep.
What's the number one way that a municipality can help a project score?
Yeah, the only way that a municipality can help, two ways, but the way that's used the most is by providing a TIF. And so there's a certain level of points, and so we did get points by putting in our application that we would get a 50% TIF for 30 years from the town. And so, I mean, if we don't get the TIF, then we'd be out of compliance with our application as well. We like the idea of the town supporting the project based not just on competitive points, but it does go a long way, especially when Maine Housing's application process, to know that the town is in support of the development, and because there's many towns that are not supportive of affordable housing.
It just underscores the part of Brett's presentation where this is but for finance. I mean, literally, this project doesn't happen if the town is not participating with some sort of TIF structure.
Correct. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. So if anyone would like to make a comment on the matter at hand, please feel free to step up to the podium. Just checking online. It's okay. I got good eyes. It looks like we're all set. So we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any discussion up here on the dais? We did have a good conversation about this at our last council meeting, so the lack of questions is not for no reason. All right, Councilor Pilch, could you please read the be ordered?
I will be happy to. Be it ordered that a new affordable housing tax increment financing district for 9.23 acres of a 52-acre property on Varney Road, map 23, lot 55, to be called the Varney Heights Senior Apartments Affordable Housing TIF, that will allow the town council to determine whether the district and development program will contribute to the expansion of affordable housing or to the betterment of the health, welfare, or safety of the residents, as well as to consider any claim by a party that the district or development program will be detrimental to that party's property's interests for which substantial evidence is produced, and whether any adverse economic effect is outweighed by the availability of affordable housing or the betterment of resident health, welfare, or safety, be approved. Be it further ordered that a credit enhancement agreement with the FHT Varney Heights LP associated with the proposed Varney Heights Senior Apartments Affordable Housing TIF District be approved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, we will go ahead with, oh,
I do have to determine whether this is going to happen. So we were voting that it will happen.
To be approved.
Okay.
I'm sorry, where do we see this?
The question is that will allow the town council to determine whether the district and development will contribute, and I think we're finding that it is.
Oh, yeah, let's just change that on the fly.
Do we have to reread it into the?
No, I would just say that, and that no adverse economic or
Will determine whether.
that,
the town
any-
council determines that.
yeah,
Determines, yeah. That. So the town council, that will allow the town council to, the town council, oh gosh, this is hard. That-
Yeah, why is it? So that the town council determines
That the district,
district.
yeah,
Yeah.
and development program will contribute to the expansion of affordable housing and
that any adverse economic.
Yeah, but it sounds like we're voting to say, well, I think we still need to figure out what this is. Not to determine, but it has been.
Has determined the da-da-da-da, and that any adverse economic impact,
where am I seeing this? And,
that.
okay, and that.
I can't believe there's so many eyes on this side.
I think it's the brick of text. Good catch, Counselor Lawrence, thank you.
I get scared when there's a lot of words in there. Oh, what does this really mean?
So should we reread it in, or,
Yes.
all right. Have you followed Counselor Pilch?
We're taking out all the letters and changing them to that. Yeah, what about?
And that no claims by a third party?
Yes.
Have been
Safety of the residents.
determined.
That will allow should be taken out too. It should say,
Yeah.
any English majors out there, come up and give us a hand?
Policymaking in the works.
Council determines.
Yeah, and can we take out the substantial evidence produced?
No.
Okay.
You determined it all, and you agreed.
Yeah.
What if we, instead of just Matt came up with this, but instead of taking the be it ordered, just say, be it ordered that the credit enhancement agreement.
You have to create the district.
You have to create the district, and all the elements in the order are things you have to find. So
and we
I'm
have to
sorry.
state them. I don't remember it ever being this hard to state this.
Well, maybe because maybe we didn't.
Right?
Not that I would ever say that.
So. We've had something similar to this, but it wasn't written in this format, I guess.
Do you want to give it a try? Yeah, I'm just looking at the first one. part of now.
I would say be created,
Yeah, be creative.
be created.
And at the bottom, and that it be approved?
Wait, nope, that's something different.
And the thing we're approving is the TIF district.
The credit enhancement agreement is the for it.
End of the first paragraph.
It's just that it's being created.
We're creating it and approving it. And that first, be it a word.
Yeah, but in the creation is the approval, right? Implied approval?
I would say
Or
that,
approve the creation of a TIF of Varney Heights Senior Apartments Affordable Housing TIF.
Hang on, Matt, we're going to get there.
Is established and,
Yep.
established and approved, and that the town council
Yep.
determines?
Yep. What would we do without a Dan Pilch?
Okay.
Council determines.
And
Betterment of resident
so
health, welfare, and safety.
residents and that no claim by any party.
Claimed by any party. Yeah, and that no claim
By any party that the district or development will be detrimental
to be detrimental to that party's property.
or has been produced.
And has considered
Oh, and has considered rather than,
any claim.
and that adverse economic effect is outweighed by the availability of affordable housing or the betterment.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
keep the any.
And then the be approved, it's already done above.
Right, so I'm crossing out be approved, right?
Yeah, yes,
Go for it.
yeah.
So, replacing the previous, substitute motion here. So be it ordered that a new affordable housing tax increment financing district for a 9.23 acre of a 52-acre property on Varney Road, map 23, lot 55, to be called the Varney Heights Senior Apartments Affordable Housing TIF, is established and approved, and that the town council has determined that the district and development program will contribute to the expansion of affordable housing or to the betterment of the health, welfare, or safety of the residents, and has considered any claim by a party that the district or development program would be detrimental to that party's property interests for which substantial evidence has been produced, and that any adverse economic effect is outweighed by the availability of affordable housing or the betterment of resident health, welfare, or safety, period. Further, be it ordered that a credit enhancement agreement with the FHT Varney Heights LP associated with the proposed Varney Heights Senior Apartments Affordable Housing TIF District be approved.
Second.
Incredibly well done. All right.
I have some poetry we can work on as a committee.
Bring it to the next meeting. Yeah, let's do it.
And so we just demonstrated how easy it is to do
Yeah,
that.
to workshop this. All right, any other questions or discussion?
Say that again?
Yeah, do you want to try it again?
That was not a haiku, right?
Many in one. All right, we will do our roll call vote. Counselor Egan?
Yes.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence?
Yes.
Counselor Pilch?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Nice job. I mean, yes.
Counselor Benoit votes yes. That's 7-0. All right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, moving on to item 51-25. This is to set a public hearing for June 3rd, 2025 for the FY26 municipal operating and capital budgets. Jessica, any background?
Now that I'm up here for the correct item that I tried to talk about earlier, yeah, this is just the standard setting of the public hearing on the budget. So it'll be June 3rd, assuming you be it order it.
Great. Counselor Lawrence, will you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for June 3rd, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to allow the public to provide comment regarding the fiscal year 2026 municipal operating and capital budgets.
Second.
All right, any questions? All right. We will do our vote. Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Pilch?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence?
Yes.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Benoit votes yes. Counselor Egan has stepped out.
Can we vote for him?
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
All right. Do we need to do anything for, okay. All right, moving on to item 52-25, to consider action relative to setting a public hearing for May 20th regarding a final application for a cannabis establishment license. Town Clerk Chris Wolf has some background for us on this one.
So this is our first cannabis license that's asking for the dispensary cultivation license. So we had a little bit of concern initially because they applied for just cultivation, then we amended our ordinance. And so Caroline has done a lot of back work on this, working with OCP to make sure that everything lines up. One of the questions we had is that the license number that they have is for their retail store in southern Maine. And what they're going to be adding here is their dispensary cultivation location. So I have sent out requests to the department heads so far, and right now, police doesn't see any issue with not issuing this license. They, no issues with the location at 24 Noble Drive, up to date. I did have, the fire chief has been out to do an inspection, and I'll let him speak to the issues that they are going to be addressing. And the code enforcement has an active permit out, so he's not ready to sign off until he's done his inspections. The owner and the licensing person will be here for the public hearing in 2 weeks, but I'll let Bob just tell you what he found with fire inspection.
Good evening. We went in last week, the deputy and myself went in and did the inspection. No major issues there per se, fairly clean operation with what they do. The one concern we had was a fire alarm system. They have security and whatnot. So we've asked them basically just to reach out to their alarm company and just see about an upgrade in the system to add fire protection in that regard. They have egress lighting, exit signs and whatnot. There's very few people that are actually working in the building, so as far as the life hazard in that regard, it's not there. So that was the recommendation that we made, and they seemed to be in favor of that. The only other suggestion we made was just, given the nature of their business, they utilize a lot of electricity, so they have multiple sub-panels throughout the building, so we've just asked to keep those areas clear, that if we have to come in for an emergency, that we have access to those areas.
Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Councillor Pillsbury, will you please read the be it ordained?
Sure.
Be it ordained that a public hearing be set for May 20th, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to discuss a final application for a cannabis establishment license at 24 Noble Drive for Hazy Hill Farms LLC, submitted by Dave Stevenson.
Second.
All right, we will do our roll call vote. Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence?
Yep.
Counselor Pilch?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
All right, Counselor Benoit votes yes. All right, moving on to item 53-25. This is to consider action relative to setting a public hearing for May 20th regarding amendments to Chapter 65, Freeport Shoreland Zoning Ordinance. We have Town Planner Kyle Drexel for background.
Everyone. So we have a ordinance amendment here for the Shoreland Zoning Ordinance. This went to the Planning Board for discussion and then had public hearing on April 2nd. There's a few different things that we're trying to tackle with this amendment. I tried to outline most of it in the memo. The first thing is more of a compliance matter. So I believe when the town previously did updates to the floodplain management ordinance, after those updates went through, DEP gave back a comment that our definition of height was no longer matching what it needed to in the state Shoreland Zoning Act. So part of this is just fixing and readjusting that definition of height within our shoreland ordinance so that it kind of breaks out into two separate definitions, one where you're in areas of special flood hazard and one, more standard definition. The biggest piece, though, of what we were trying to do with this amendment was regarding shoreline stabilization projects. So the currently shoreline stabilization, it's considered a land use. It's in the table of uses in the ordinance. This is for when people are looking to stabilize, shoreline that may have eroded on their property. These currently go to the project review board. The board, over the past few years, and even just since I've arrived here, gets a ton of these applications, numerous at some meetings. And a lot of times they're, a bunch of property owners all in a row coming at the same time. The project review board doesn't have a ton of room for input and review a lot of the times with these applications. They're a lot of times it's more of a, code enforcement discussion, working with DEP, that the applicant is just, sort of meeting any vegetation removal standards and things like that. But overall, the projects are a benefit for the property owners and the town. There's no real structures being introduced most of the time. It's, riprap going in, revegetating, things like that. So for kind of efficiency and streamlining purposes, something that we're recommending is moving these approvals from the project review board to the staff review board. The staff review board is made up of the planner, code enforcement officer, fire, police, and public works. We meet during the day. We meet instead of once a month, we meet on a rolling basis. So it offers some more flexibility for these types of projects, and we don't think would cause any lapse in ability to review. So for staff, PRB, and applicant sort of efficiency, we're looking to move those types of applications from the PRB to staff review board level of review. And we've checked with DEP on that. They're okay with that. Then a few other small changes here. Added in an exemption for non-conforming lots of record with existing single-family homes that the code officer can issue a permit for things like a generator, fuel storage tank, or accessory structure, where those could also be non-conforming when it comes to setbacks from water bodies, so long as they're not more non-conforming than the existing dwelling. So this just provides a little flexibility for property owners in those kind of non-conforming situations. We added in some just kind of mentions of staff review board in our applicability sections for administering bodies, as the staff review board doesn't currently have any authority within the shoreland zoning ordinance, so that would be a new change. And then we removed some mentions of the term rivers and great ponds throughout the ordinance, as most areas coming under the authority of our shoreline zoning ordinance would be considered coastal wetland and not technically considered a river or great pond. So the planning board held its hearing on April 2nd. Legal ads were posted. The board recommended unanimously that it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. There's not really too much here that directly speaks to any recommendations in the comp plan, but we do have some general language that, coastal areas, streams and rivers and wetlands are protected by local shoreline zoning regulations. We're not really making any changes to that here. This is more of a process type of change. So there are no issues identified there. So yeah, now we're looking to set the public hearing and then bring this back to you in a couple weeks. Happy to answer any questions though.
Kyle, do you have a sense of, since your time here, roughly, just off the top of your head, how many applications had to go to the board that with this change now might be handled by staff? Roughly 10 to 15?
Maybe 10 probably, yeah, in like 7 months.
Yeah.
So, it might be every other meeting we'll get 2 or 3 to go, something like that. We had 2 last month. We have 2 this upcoming meeting. So,
And if the staff are handling that, what's the time frame difference between what you think is a reasonable expectation for staff to have time to review the application? Because I've seen these, they're complex. You got all the measurements and what's more conforming or less non-conforming. But what's the time difference of staff being able to handle this versus having it be scheduled and presented? Maybe there's even a second meeting. Like, what's your sense of how much faster these things might get handled?
yeah, it should be faster. So these typically don't have 2 meetings at the PRB. Like, we don't typically have like a sketch meeting for these and then come back. But it's just more flexible. Typically, when an application comes in and we handle it for staff review, we can get that application in and then have a meeting within 2 weeks. We still send out notice to abutters, but we sort of just, as soon as we get the application, we can start moving. Whereas with the project review board schedule, where it's more set in stone, they meet the 3rd Wednesday, people might have to wait a couple weeks longer than that. Some of these are more, I would say most of them are, the people putting together these applications are pretty familiar with the applications, so they come in pretty well organized. So they're pretty easy for staff to take a look at and review. Or people have already brought code enforcement out to their property to talk through the idea with a DEP rep or something, so they're already familiar, and we're already aware it's coming in before the application actually comes in. So I think it'll be relatively easier. I think the biggest thing is it will free up time at PRB meetings. So when we have, 4 other items on the agenda for bigger projects, we wouldn't also have to have, spend an hour just talking through the findings for 3 shoreline stabilization projects as well. It can kind of eat into those agendas, and it's just more staff time leading up to the meeting.
And just to follow up, are there other, well, I think there are others. So do you have a sense of other particular recommendations in the project review process of what might come forward with a recommendation for staff to handle? Or, I know these are related to shoreline zone.
You're just talking in general?
Yeah, like there are others coming, because we've been talking about this for a while. I just want to get that out in the public, that there are more recommendations coming forward from staff for simplifying those items that have to go to a board versus what can be handled by the staff.
Yeah, so actually tomorrow at the planning board meeting, we're sort of having a discussion, the first preliminary discussion about some procedural potential changes that could be made to our site plan review ordinance, which is, the most widely used probably development process that the project review board utilizes. So tomorrow night, we'll start talking about some areas that staff has identified as potential barriers, things that kind of draw out the process and things like that. They could be cleaned up potentially or done in a different way. So yeah, we're going to start having that conversation and hopefully working towards kind of doing some streamlining and efficiency in a variety of PRB stuff.
That's great to hear. When we had our discussion for council goals, that was one of the things to really be able to streamline. So just trying to establish for our public record here, we're making great progress on that. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to thank you, Kyle, and the project, the planning board for considering this in particular. Over the last several years, I have witnessed a number of constituents, particularly District 2, coming in for project review board meetings, and it's usually because of economies of scale, multiple neighbors trying to cooperate to get equipment there to do this shoreline stabilization, and they are often sitting through lengthy meetings ahead of much more complicated or behind much more complicated projects to stand up for 5 minutes and get pretty simple approval. So I think this will certainly help move things along for a lot of residents.
That's a good point. Sometimes
that's
we
going to
have
just
these
keep
bigger
coming
agendas and, yeah.
for the rest of our lifetimes in terms of shoreline stabilization.
Yeah, these are typically pretty quick applications as far as their time at the meeting. But right, sometimes we have continued applications from previous meetings that are first on the agenda that might draw out and take, hours of time. And then people are kind of hanging out until 8, 9 p.m. when it could have been a 10-minute conversation at 2 p.m. during the afternoon.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. Councillor Egan, could you read the be it ordained?
Be it ordained that a public hearing be set for May 20th, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to discuss proposed draft amendments to Chapter 65 Freeport Shoreland Zoning Ordinance, including sections 107, 305, 306, 401, 403, 404, and 409.
Second.
All right, we will do our roll call vote. Councillor Smith?
Aye.
Councillor Pilch?
Aye.
Councillor Lawrence?
Yes.
Councillor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Councillor Egan?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
All right, Councillor Benoit votes yes.
Thanks.
The chair is stepping down for just a moment, so we will continue with item 5425, which is to consider action relative to the town council countersigning the RSU 5 budget validation referendum warrant and calling the election. And Town Clerk Christine Wolf is returning to the podium to give us some background on that.
Only if you have questions. This is the standard warrant that you have to sign in order for me to conduct the election. June 10th is going to be the election. I am going to do a quick plug for the RSU 5 budget meeting, which is where you can participate in setting those final numbers that will be voted on Election Day. That is going to be Wednesday, May 14th. It's at the Durham School. Durham Community School this year, and it starts at 6:30, and that's where we'll go through that budget line by line. But this is just calling the warrant, calling the election. I'm sorry.
Any questions for Chris? No. Councillor Pilch, will you read the be it ordered?
I will. Be it ordered that the town council endorse the RSU 5 budget validation referendum warrant, calling the June 10th, 2025 budget validation election.
Second.
Great. No further questions. We'll vote. Councillor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Councillor Lawrence?
Yes.
Councillor Pilch?
Aye.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
And Councillor Smith votes aye. And the next item, 5525, is to consider action relative to a grant from the Cumberland County Digital Access Stipend Program for the Freeport Community Library. Councillor Lawrence, can you read that? Be it ordered.
Sure can. Be it ordered, the town accept the $5,000 $5,000 stipend from GPCOG's Cumberland County Digital Access Stipend Program, made possible through the Regional and Tribal Broadband Partners Program, funded by the Maine Connectivity Authority and the administration in Cumberland County, by the Greater Portland Council of Governments, and authorized the town manager to expend the funds. Program data tracker. I don't know what that.
Second.
And I believe we have our library director online. If we have questions, Winter, do you have anything to add?
No, unless you have questions for what we are intending to use the funds for, I can talk about that briefly.
Sure. Why don't you share?
Okay. Yeah, so, my camera's being weird. So I applied for this grant to help fund a semi-private booth for the library for our one-on-one tech help assistance, so that we can have a more distraction-free environment for that. So that's where librarians work one-on-one with library patrons with technology needs. Some of those appointments can be pretty lengthy, and sometimes they can involve people's personal information. And we also have a lot of folks who need to do job interviews on Zoom, telehealth appointments on Zoom, and things of that nature using our Wi-Fi, but we don't have any really semi-private areas for them to do that. So rather than have people just use library tables out in the open where other people are trying to get work done, we were looking at these booths that have sound muffling. They're semi-private, so there isn't a door on them, but they do sort of muffle out a lot of the sound in the surrounding area and also sort of keep the sound inside that's going on inside the booth. So this $5,000 would pay for a little more than half of one of those, and I'm expecting some donated funds to cover the rest.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Do you want to take over? You want to go? Okay. We will take a vote. Councilor Councilor Egan.
Yes.
Councilor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Councilor Lawrence.
Yes.
Councilor Pilch.
Yes.
Councilor Benoit.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yes.
Councilor Brown.
Yes.
And Councilor Smith votes yes.
All right. Moving on to 5625. All right, so this is to authorize the execution of an agreement for technical consulting services related to the ongoing PPI for Route 1. And we have Brett Richardson to give some background.
Settings. Again? Yeah. Actually, I can probably just talk about it. It's not a big deal.
And you get it now.
Okay, there we go. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Brett Richardson again. I'm really excited about this project, Maine DOT Planning Partnership Initiative, and we're here to share the process and the consultant that our committee selected. Real quick recap over the Freeport Planning Partnership Initiative Transit-Oriented Development Project. It's a 50-50 cost share with Maine DOT. However, the town gets to lead the project. The project area encompasses the downtown vision area, the dog bone area, and the two growth areas within the comp plan. So it's well situated. It represents the Route 1 corridor from Maine Beer Company up through downtown to Upper Mass Landing Road. It's going to feature public engagement, a focus on placemaking, development opportunities within 1,000 feet of the Route 1 corridor. So there'll be a real good opportunity for engagement, targeted engagement with property owners around good project opportunities. And also a focus on multimodal transportation, high-functioning Route 1 corridor, but also bike ped and local microtransit. And the key here is that we're taking the community's vision and focusing on feasible, buildable designs. And it's also a platform then to go out and raise money jointly with Maine DOT, looking for bigger dollars to actually do the construction. So we're transitioning from planning really here into implementation. The consultant selection process, we had an RFP open from February 26th through March 26th. The process is qualifications based, so we didn't just rip open the envelope, turn to the back page and look for the lowest cost. We really focused on the highest qualification, and so therefore the cost estimates were sealed, and we only opened one for the consultant deemed the most qualified. We received 8 proposals. Usually DOT says they get about half of that. So a lot of interest in this from a nice cross-section of applicants. And the review committee included town council representatives, Complete Streets Committee representatives, the public works director, as well as manager's office staff, and then a couple reps from Maine DOT. So a good selection committee. We interviewed the 4 highest qualified firms. And then there was good news is there's really strong consensus on who that highest qualified firm is. And that is engineering firm Stantec with Spec Dempsey, a planning firm, in combination with them. They have strong engineering capacity to make sure the designs are feasible. Walkability and placemaking are within their wheelhouse. There'll be a great asset there. The proposal is well within the budget, so that's good news as well. We've reached alignment on the contract terms, and we're ready to get to work. I appreciate your willingness to move the June 17th meeting to the 24th. That's going to allow Tom to only have one meeting that night, which is really to kick off this PPA process. So really excited about this consensus, the strong proposals, and the team that we've landed. And we're looking for your nod of the head and authorization to move forward.
Any questions? Councillor Pilch?
Will we get a chance to see the proposal? Because there's no cost associated with it or terms associated with it. We're just saying, go ahead and move forward with this proposal.
It was included with materials, I believe.
The proposal, sorry, the contract and the cost and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you want to take that? It's a boiler, we're using the boilerplate independent contractor agreement, and the costs.
149. Yeah, well, under 150 by a few pennies. Yeah, so it's a strong. We got some room to do other work that we've talked about within this.
But otherwise, it's just do what you said in the proposal, is the spirit of the contract. Okay.
I just want to thank Brett for his leadership in this and partnership with MDOT between the Complete Streets Committee and council representatives and staff. It was really a robust discussion among initially just the written proposals and then the interviews. And it was really an impressive group of applicants. And I know when we were first putting this out, I was concerned about what we would get for a response, because our response in very different planning RFPs has been limited. And so it was particularly gratifying to have not only regional but national firms be attracted to Freeport as a place that they wanted to come and make a difference and be part of the transformation that we've been talking about for several years in the downtown.
I also got the clear sense in that response that Freeport has a lot of eyes on it. People are looking to Freeport to see what we pull off, what we can do for making a more walkable, livable, place you want to hang out downtown. And I really read that in the response, and I'm excited about that.
I think that response is a testament to the work that's gone in, the downtown vision, the dog bone. As Councilor just mentioned, there's a lot of progress being made. I think we really have a great opportunity here to promote the kickoff meeting and the fact that we have this great team. Jeff Speck wrote Walkable Cities. That's a nationally known book. And we can promote that as tell the story underneath a press release about the progress that we're making here in Freeport. So it's really excited about it.
Questions for Brett? And I will read be it ordered. Be it ordered that the town manager or designee be authorized to execute an agreement with Stantec Consulting Services of Portland, Maine for technical consulting services related to the Collaborative Planning Partnership Initiative between the Maine Department of Transportation and the town of Freeport.
Second.
All right, we will go ahead with our roll call vote. Counselor Egan.
Yes.
Counselor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence.
Yes.
Counselor Pilch.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Aye.
Counselor Brown, he's not on our screen
Yes.
anymore, but there he is. Okay, Counselor Benoit votes yes. Thank you. I'm very excited about that.
Can I just ask a quick question for the town manager? What is our procurement policy if this doesn't meet the need to have it go before council?
So if it has been budgeted for and it is under $100,000, it does not go before council. It doesn't have to. You notice we bring things to you that we think you should weigh in on.
This one is over 100,000.
Well, we're only responsible for half of that.
Oh, okay.
75.
Yep, 75.
Great, thanks.
All right, moving on to item 57-25. This is to consider action relative to funding a request from the Shellfish Conservation Commission to conduct a special research project. We have Harbor Master Charlie here to introduce.
We also have the chair, Nelson Larkins, here too.
Oh, great, and Nelson Larkins as well. Hi.
Questions you guys might have. Good evening. I guess I'll first start off by saying this is something that the commission has been investigating probably the last several, 4 or 5 years now. This project has been on their radar since February. It's mainly trying to answer, the one question that every municipality wants to answer is, what management techniques can we use to keep a fishery going when populations are naturally declining. So the commission feels this study is more or less the first step into figuring that out. Part of this project, or the main bulk of this project where you're seeing that dollar amount, proposes to set up over 100, they're called recruitment boxes, about 1 foot by 1 foot, over 10 different areas throughout the town. And those are going to tell us which mudflats essentially have the highest settlement rates for juvenile clams. From there, you can use techniques to protect these clams to bring them up to that 2-inch size, which is the legal size that you can sell a clam, is 2 inches. So together, those two things was about $33,000, but we're really targeting that first step, which is to investigate which areas in Freeport where we do have that highest rate of settlement. I'll let Nelson add anything if he
This is a natural step. From 2013 through 2018, Freeport was at the forefront in trying to identify what was happening to native shellfish populations, soft-shell clams, in conjunction with Brian Beal and the Down East Institute, who are really the foremost authorities on all of this and are involved all along the coast. And it's their proposal bringing this forward. It's really the natural next step because that identified and figured out the predatory issues that we have, because there were a lot of different theories as to why the shellfish population has diminished so much over the past 20, 30 years. And then why this is natural is you then have to figure out, okay, do we just let this occur and just leave it all alone and lose a very viable and productive shellfish industry commercial shellfish industry in Freeport, which employs a large number of individuals and just traditionally has been a source of income to the town and to the overall state. And so this is step one of this 3-year proposed process, is to basically, all right, we know we have problems with predators, but we also know that there is very strong information that there still is a lot of young shellfish out there. They just can't get to the growth size where they can survive to be harvestable. And what we need to learn, and what this step does, is tells us where to concentrate our efforts, because we got a lot of mud and we got a lot of unproductive mud at this point. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't necessarily be productive in the future if it then was the next logical steps, if we identify and are able to figure this out with this 1-year program. The next step then would potentially be to then go out and test out what they've really been trying to develop over the past several decades, practical ways to basically save all those baby clams. And this is a variation on what we're seeing happening in my mind all along the coast, where we just have to adapt to our environment, from everything from mussels to clams to oysters to scallops, whatever it might be. So we think this is a very, it is real live money, $17,000 or so, but it's very, very productively used. Brian Beals and his folks, this is very comprehensive. You've got the materials on this. This is all set out. Also, some of this money is going to be funneled right back into the community, because they're going to be using our clammers to do the work in many cases and things like that. So, any questions? Thank you.
I have a quick question. Overall, I think this is a great project. I'm excited to hear about it. We had heard about it at a budget workshop with the Shellfish Commission a couple of years ago at this point. It seems pretty crucial to sustaining clamming in the town and state, honestly. I just want to touch base on the timeline. I know it says April to May deployment of the recruitment boxes and the predator exclusion trials begin. Are you on track for being able to do that?
This would be next May.
This would be next May, okay.
Yeah,
We're looking ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we wanted to get to you while we were gone.
Good. I work in grants, and so I'm used to being like, all right, let's go right now, I guess.
We'd like to, but it is.
Yes. That's what I was hoping. That's the right answer, yeah.
Just for my own learning curve, the predators that we're trying to find out more about are primarily green crabs, or are there other things
This
that we're...
isn't so much about the predators. We know
Can you
it.
step up to the mic?
I'm sorry. This isn't so much about the predators. I mean, the emphasis of the predators that we're seeing in Freeport are the invasive green crabs, but also the milky silk ribbon worms, which are non-invasive. They're a natural predator in the area. There are different areas of the coast that have different highlighted predators. We've got bad crab populations, and that's probably, from the research that's been done, the primary emphasis is this is the settling of the spawn as they settle into the mud to figure out where they are. The issue is they settle in, then they get eaten. So we know they're getting eaten because we can see from the research that's already been done that the stock is diminished, or the survivable stock is diminished so much. This is more to find out. Some communities are just dumping seed. They're just dumping and hoping
That it catches.
that it
on.
catches.
Yeah.
What we're looking to do is be a bit more scientific about that, rather than asking you for $17,000 to get all that and then just dump it and hope. This is to identify where the flats really naturally already have it occurring, and then nature itself, with some prodding and help and protection, could potentially do the job.
Thank you. My knowledge of this is this big, so thank you.
Yeah, I also have a lot to learn here, so I pardon the questions. But what I think I understand is that you said this is step one of a three-step process, and this is more about finding out where the spawn currently is. What are steps 2 and 3, and what do those look like?
Should be in paperwork that you have. Step 2 would be a year later, then introducing protective netting and things like that to actually, and they've done a lot of, we've done it even here in some of our town flats, some selective areas, and the development of how you can do it practically, economically feasible, and so forth. So the second year would be more concentrated on, okay, now we know where the resources are, let's go out and protect them and do the studies as to what are the retention rates. Because again, if you can't protect them, then you're not going to go ahead and expend the funds and move forward from that. But that, the proposal for that would be another about $15,000 for that season. So this is a long-term project of sorts, but it's got to get started, or we just kind of may have to give up on this.
Is there a step 3 beyond that?
Step 3, I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah, step 3 was to construct larger boxes. I think we had 10 by 10 feet instead of 1 by 1. So you're essentially growing that plot to see just how much you can collect, and then all together using the nets to see if, so let's say if someone had, a section of mud that was, a quarter of an acre, could you actually, make a living off that space? You might not be able to. There are towns doing similar work, but, no one's really kind of followed through with it to see if it could actually happen. And it may not happen, but that's kind of the question on the Casco Bay area's radar right now.
And any idea on budget for step 3 yet, or is it too early?
It's a little too early. We might, get through with step 1, and we might find, we're kind of taking it step by step.
We would have some time to investigate other sources, potentially, too. And the idea is at some point that folks would want to take this on commercially themselves.
Once they have the proof of concept.
Yeah, my question is about the sources of the funds. So the 17,000, that's all town money. Is that the full entire scope of the project? Is Down East Institute contributing, or the state contributing, or commercial, private?
Not at this
contributing?
point.
That's all
If we
town
wait
money.
for the state, it's not happening.
Okay.
The MR is not particularly proactive, in our opinion.
And other towns are not pursuing anything like this?
There are certainly initiatives, and actually the Down East Institute, I think we are being compared in some ways to 2 other towns along the coast, but
There's a number of towns that are using, they'll buy a bulk of seed, they'll net over it to try and protect it for, X amount of years, maybe 2 to 3 years to get it to that harvestable size. They'll pull it off, and they might have a patch of flats that have, maybe a 30% die-off as opposed to 90% die-off because they use that protective buffer from predation.
they have generally looked to us to be a bit more proactive than some other communities. So that's a positive and a negative, I guess, that they are looking to us. The Down East Institute itself, I mean, they definitely have aided us and helped us in a lot of ways that have been basically free of charge. But when we get into these types of things, I mean, they have access to certain kinds of grants in some ways. But this would be, and again, not all the money is going to them because we have to have the boxes built. It has to be tended, and that's local more.
This might go beyond sort of the scope of the conversation we want to have here, but I'm curious about, this is almost turning clamming into an aquaculture process. So I'm curious your thoughts on
We
that.
have to be careful how we talk about that.
Yeah.
Because shellfish are fish, and it's in the intertidal zone, but they are fish in the intertidal zone, so this is a part of that industry. It is not what you would be defined as aquaculture, like seaweed off a dock or oysters off a dock or something like that. And that's something to keep in mind through all of this, that there are a lot of commercial operations in the aquaculture right now. What needs to be developed more is potentially having a commercial, because our clammers are independent folks that just go out and dig in the mud. It's not like you're going out. So it sounds in some ways like aquaculture, and it is in ways, but there is a differentiation there.
Is it feasible to commercially farm clams?
That's what we're figuring out. There are areas, I mean, and it depends on the types of clams. Freeport's very conducive to soft shell historically, and not so much quahogs, the harder shell. And other communities have more of that. I know that, in Massachusetts, and they've tried a little bit in Harpswell, a commercial producer in Massachusetts who I've seen some study work on the fact that they've tried to develop that industry commercially a little bit, just on a experimental basis in Harpswell. And it was a guy coming up from Massachusetts who does it. So there are other potential opportunities, and we do have those, and guys are out there harvesting those as well. It's just probably not as conducive an area for that, just because of the lay of our mud.
Yeah, is the difference here that clams need mud to grow, and oysters and seaweed and mussels, they grow out in the open water, so. So it's different in that you can't move them out, you have to, becomes a land.
And permitting and land
Yeah.
rights and things like that, there's differences there. Yeah.
Oh. Well, now we're talking shops.
I've been talking in microphones too much, as you can tell from my voice already today. It was a long day that way. Trying to hide. So Yeah, we have to watch, or we don't have to watch, we just have to define the different areas because they are defined differently.
I think just to that point about the somewhat gray area between fishing and aquaculture, there are other fisheries that require somewhat stabilized infrastructure. If you think about the lobster fishery, where you have traps that are sitting there, and you've got buoys that are sitting there, we're talking about something similar to that, but in the intertidal zone where you have a structure, but it's still about a wild creature that you're trying to attract. I just want to say thank you to you both and the Shellfish Conservation Commission, because of exactly the point that you raised, Nelson, about the fact that we could just be letting this go. But native shellfish have been a primary source of sustenance to people on these shores and waters for 10,000 years, and particularly important to many generations of people in Freeport over just the last few hundred years. And it would really be a shame if we weren't taking this step, I think, to do everything that we could do to figure out how to keep that fishery alive in Freeport.
Thank you.
All right. So, any other questions for Nelson or Charlie? Councilor Pilch.
I don't know that we have an answer tonight, but do we have any idea of the size of the clam fishery in Freeport? Number of resident licenses, quantity of economic activity, something like that?
Just over 60 commercial license holders. Obviously this time of year, we roughly have 10 to 15 folks out on the flats, and then in the summertime, it bumps up probably around, anywhere from 25 to 30 on a good Saturday when the price is high. But a lot of folks do, obviously they've grabbed other jobs in the ebbs and flows of the, prices and dips of landings and stuff. But, we're right up there in Casco Bay as far as number of harvesters and landings.
And it's still viable for those 25 or so folks out of the 60, like they're still making money.
Yeah, yep, definitely, yep. It's, as you know, it's hard work, grueling work, but the folks that do get after it can make a decent living, yep.
We also have the recreational shellfish licenses in the community. So folks, for basically, I think with the water quality test cost, what is it, $19 a year? You can go out and take 13 pounds of clams a day yourself, right?
Correct, yep.
Get it wrong, seeing that that's me. Anyway, and also, so there's that element for the community, and then also trying to coordinate just to keep the kids involved in the schools as well, and understanding their community and history.
All right. I think we're back up to you, Councilor Smith, for the reading of the be it ordained.
Be it ordained that the town council approve allocating up to $17,437 from previously approved Shellfish Conservation Commission special projects, and that the fiscal year 26 operating budget to conduct a special research project focused on developing strategies to enhance and/or sustain the town of Freeport's commercial softshell clam populations through experimental field-based projects that Clammers Shellfish Commission members, elected officials, and volunteers.
Second.
Any final questions?
I have lots, but we get into the weeds.
I know, I think we're all very interested. So,
talking mud.
Yeah, please give us updates. We all are very intrigued. All right, Councilor Egan.
Yes.
Councilor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Councilor Lawrence.
Yes.
Councilor Pilch.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Aye.
Councilor Brown.
Yes.
All right, Councilor Benoit votes yes.
I will just say, I think there's a word missing.
Oh,
but
no.
We're not going to wordsmith it right now. I think
Thank
it's
you very
just.
much.
I think it's just typographical. Yeah, it's. I don't. Oh, that's probably what I'm. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Never mind. It's there. I just didn't.
We got the
but it's
spirit.
okay. Yeah.
We got the spirit of the. I truly have been thinking about that project since we heard about it. I'm happy to see it come back up. Okay, so moving on to our public comment period, part 2. This is limited to comments for items not on the agenda. This is for virtual attendees only. We do ask that you state your name and your town, and is for 3 minutes. Let's see if we have any offers. All right, closing public comment, moving on. Other business, heads up that we will actually be tabling item number 2 until our next meeting. So we will start with our FY26 Municipal Operating and Capital Budget Workshop with Jessica Malloy.
Howdy, howdy.
And we have public safety tonight. That's our focus area.
You okay with your,
I had plenty of people here to assist me.
Thanks very much for this, Jessica.
Let that be a long Sunday. Be a lesson I have to get year off my own life for any reason. No, it's the Tuesday. Yeah. All right, I think we're ready.
Yeah, I believe we're handling public safety tonight, so I'm ready for questions and backup from staff when you are. Assuming we're going to handle this like we did on Thursday.
We did. So the way we did that last time was we went through sort of account by account. And I don't think we printed them this time. Does anyone need a copy of the? Okay. So do we have any questions for?
I think, Jessica, it would probably be helpful, like we did on Thursday, to just, as we're going through, tell us the page numbers we're looking at.
Oh, sure.
Between the small and large documents.
Okay, absolutely. Let me just get there myself. So on the small document, it's starting with page 12 is police. I got to spread out here to get all my pages. And in the large document, you're going to be looking at page 202. And we should be moving numerically up from there for tonight. The public safety is typically together, so.
All right. Any questions from the council?
Can you talk a little bit about ammunition and why actuals are underpacing projections, and then why FY26 is significantly higher than FY24 actuals, and then where we're projected? I mean, is it just like a cost per unit?
Yep.
Or do we have a surplus at the moment that we're using? Like, any context would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just get to the right account here. Yeah, so that account we're primarily, the reason, I don't know that I would call it an underpace, but we have not spent in 2025 as of yet. It's typically a one-time bulk purchase that we make, so you should see the majority of the cost come at the point in time in which replenishment of stock is needed. And so I'm projecting the full amount to be expended. I believe in 2024, there was some holdover because of pricing, which is why you see the if I'm following the right line, which is why you see 4,200 in 2025 already, because we held some of 2024's purchase over to 2025 due to pricing. And so 2026 is to hopefully put us on track with where pricing is. This feels so loud. Thank God it wasn't that loud when I was coughing. I'm so sorry. God, that was awful.
Same thing with vehicle fuel. Are we, it seems like we might be, is this, what's the date, this, through the 14th of April?
Correct.
So 2.5 months. Okay. So we're maybe a little bit low this year, but probably come in close to.
Yeah, looking at projections of fuel pricing and where we'll be, and just when you talk about increasing coverage and staff and the use, it just kind of compounds, but.
Do you do any projections based on like time of year and cost for winter versus summer fuel? Do you do any of that?
No, we typically sign a contract for our fuel pricing, and then it's allocated across the departments based on average mileage change on each of the vehicles. So we kind of look at, I want to say, for, I don't actually have the mileage written on this sheet, but yeah, we look at the mileage traveled for each of the departments that have fleet and take the cost of the gas versus diesel, depending on what their makeup is, and extrapolate that for the next year with some consideration on where the new contract may come in.
And then can you talk a little bit about the overtime wages and how that ties in with staffing plans going forward? Because it seems like we're putting less into overtime for next year, and I'm assuming that
Yeah,
it gets shifted elsewhere.
Yep, so we're not, I guess, yes, we're technically, we're keeping the budget the same for overtime wages, but yes, that is short of where our actuals have been. Because we've been underspending in the salary line, and so the overtime line is for coverage of those, shifts, and we're anticipating hopefully being fully staffed, as well as having appropriate coverage levels where that additional expenditures of overtime won't be needed. It'll just be our standard expectation, I guess.
Just to follow up, I know it's hard to talk about staffing levels because people are coming and going throughout the year, but the intent is that for next fiscal year, we'll have a net of one additional staff person.
That is correct.
In the past year, which will help keep the overtime in line.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks. Sorry, Matt.
Anything else on police?
I was quickly looking to see if I could cross-reference the capital plan, but I can't pull it up fast enough. The $7,000 for the hoist, both this current year and next year, that's not the replacement.
You're talking in the next marine resource under hoist? Yeah, that's just an annual 4062.
It's just operating of that.
Yes, it's not for replacement.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Yep.
See how we can now move on. We'll just go into the marine resources and harbor patrol. That's okay. The hoist is a very hot topic. All right. Any questions?
Looking at police, marine resource, harbor patrol, and then reception. Is that the focus for tonight?
That sure is.
And the fire rescue.
Yeah.
So that we're going right through that section of
Stop
pages.
at public utilities?
Perfect.
Okay.
I'll ask a question now because I'm not sure if we have another night when we talk about revenues, but I'm looking at mooring revenue, which is sort of related to what we're talking about tonight. And it's been, so I'm on page 235. Sorry for making us jump around. Mooring revenue is pretty consistent with where it's been over the years. No increase due to the new fees that we established for outside of the harbor, right? Is that just because it's going more towards the fee to track those, the online program? Basically, I think it's $6 or $12 to even participate in the online program that allows you to enter your mooring. So is that why we're not increasing the mooring revenue anyway?
Yes,
That question
sorry,
was
I
clear,
thought
but
it,
yeah.
I'm trying to speak softly because it's so loud, but.
We charge people
I
the
know.
$6 or $12, but that goes all to the software company.
Yes.
I just gotta get back to my place. So we can go on to fire. So employee training, can you say more about that increase?
Sure can. Employee training?
For fire.
Yep, just getting the right account number so I know. Yeah, so we are looking at, we went up $2,500, and the majority of that is just a specialized, I believe, a specialized training program for new staff.
So as we hire new people, they have to get firefighter 1, firefighter 2. So that has a cost associated with it. We also have been looking at our standard training program. So remember, you got the wonderful pictures of the rope rescue initial class. That will have follow-up annual refreshers that have to come along with it. So this is us saying we have a bunch of new people. We're also have, as we promote people into the captain position, they really need fire officer 1 and 2 training. So while the training is free, the getting them there and feeding them while they are there is usually not free.
Can I, you good? Can you explain, I know you had said before fire and rescue, there's some fluidity between there. Is that what's driving the professional salaries, the actuals versus where you're projecting to come in?
That is correct. Yep.
And then again, the same question applies for overtime wages. It looks like, we're overspending. But
Transfers will occur for the end of the year to move between the two departments. It's a disconnect between where at this stage I budget versus where they're coded for actual payroll weekly. So we're in the process of transitioning to treat them as one, and this is just kind of the fallout of it looking like that.
Got it. Can you tell us what goes into some of the individual non-personnel lines, like contract services, the equipment repair?
Sure.
Those items, just for some context.
Yeah, absolutely. The contracted services are primarily our billing, EMS billing with Comstar. It's also some, we have a medical director, contractor stipend, and as well as contracts with some companies on Target or maybe Target Solutions. It's where we do our hose testing. So there's a variety. We have our subscription to Hanger Solutions, so there's a variety of stuff in there. Equipment repair?
Yeah. Before we move on to that,
Sure.
What's driving the increase in budgeted amount for fiscal '26? Is it
The
additional
Comstar
service?
billing, just with the amount of, because it's a percentage based off of the collection, essentially, and there's an increase in collections.
Yeah, the other ones, I was just curious, sort of like what falls where in terms of preventive maintenance and equipment costs versus, items that might be in the capital budget, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so it will come out of capital if it's, maintenance and repairs typically are all designed to come out of operating. We have a light appropriation within the capital plan that if something of a more significant nature needs to be fixed, that we would try to pull it from the capital plan versus having an unintentional swing within the operating budget. And that's typically, I think there's like 15,000 in the capital plan right now for that. But we try to keep this, down to under 5,000. But when things unexpectedly happen, then we fall back on the capital plan if we can.
And are those, like the tech repair, the equipment repair, are those things preventive maintenance contracts, or are they just ad hoc as things need repair or attention?
A little bit of both. Yeah, there's some streetwise scheduling is primarily in the tech repair. That's I would have to defer to Chief to know exactly more about what that actually is and the purpose. But that's the biggest driver of the tech repair line. So. If you want more information on that, we can pull Chief up, but that's the primary driver in that. For very brief. Yeah, I just have the ERS streetwise scheduling.
And that's under the equipment.
Yeah, the technical repair.
Technical repair.
Yeah.
So a lot of that falls into having our cardiac monitors service. That's an annual service that we do. The stretchers, the power cots that we have for the ambulances, that all requires an annual maintenance. We do flow testing of the air packs every year. Bottles are every 3 years, as we've talked about, I think, previously. So there are our ladders, our ground ladders are tested every year. The aerial device, last year's ladder was tested prior, obviously, unfortunately, before going out of service. But all of those types of services are done and are required every year.
Great. Thanks.
I was on camera.
Can I go back to the Comstar billing just to follow up?
Absolutely.
On Matt's question? So if it's a percentage of the collections, is there also an increase in the revenue?
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily see that. That is within the capital because it's a reserve. The collection of the billing revenue goes into reserves for rescue-specific infrastructure replacement. Good question. Thanks for keeping me on my toes.
Just a curiosity, how do we determine, because this came up, I think, with Bartle, too, at your last meeting that I missed. How do we know which funds are directed towards reserves versus available for the general fund?
You have a reserve policy, and that typically outlines what can go where, in whether in totality or by percentage.
And it's specific by account or by source?
Some of them are, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this
some
particular one?
For the billing, yes.
Billing,
Yep.
Bartle.
Yeah, there's a 200,000, I think, that goes to the general fund, and the rest remains in the billing, in the reserve.
What's the rationale for the percentage? How do we evaluate that on an ongoing basis?
I think somebody.
The policy was in place long before I got here, so
I was going to say
your evaluation is what you would like to do.
Somebody thought long and hard about it about a decade ago, and it's just kind of
been.
Yep.
Perhaps we should
Maybe.
put it on a list someplace.
Yep.
Finance committee? List grows ever longer.
Seems every meeting.
I'm sorry, I know you touched on this, but I'm seeing a very consistent strategy with overtime and professional strategies throughout all of our public safety, and moving on to rescue now as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How we're decreasing overtime and increasing the professional salaries?
Yep, so part of this is when you look at the differences between new hires and retirements, the people are falling at different points on the wage scales. So you're talking about some movements there. There's also a push to obtain appropriate staffing levels that will allow for a decrease in decrease in overtime hours and create a better work-life balance for staff.
I'm not comfortable rolling back overtime based on assumption. I like to see, unless like you're adding a whole person and there's a clear overtime pattern that you're filling, simply because the way we think it's going to happen very rarely comes exactly so. And so when I look at the fire department, it has been really significantly going over. We think, especially if you look at the rescue, we think that adding the one position that we reclassified, or reclassifying the administrative position to a line firefighter position, will help eat into that. But at the same time, we're now trying to get our hands around patterns of just normal sickness, injury that we're seeing in the department. So I'm not sure. I think the only thing I can tell you with fire is that we're taking steps to try to hopefully come into budget this coming year.
Can I ask a question about public safety reception? Are we on that page? I was always confused by this. We have public safety reception. That's different than administrative positions in the departments, right? Because we also have admins.
Mm-hmm.
Given that we outsource all the dispatch, what do we do with public safety reception? Is that a busy position, or is that kind of a quiet position?
I believe it's a fairly busy position within the organization. I know that they monitor traffic in and out of the building at the main entrance, as well as the phone lines, I believe, as far as like the general PD line that would not go through dispatch. And there's assistance with both departments, I believe, between reporting and things. So it's kind of like a little hybrid position.
Admin support, I know we call it reception, but
Yeah.
my guess is that was a reclassification from dispatch when we shut down dispatch operations.
Yeah, that's sort of my question. If it's admin support, is that something that could be combined with the existing admin support person we have, or is it way too much work to do that?
So I think this is a discussion we could have offline.
Happy to do that.
And also, so our dispatch line, we pay that to Brunswick?
Correct.
Yeah.
I know there's telephone for each of in a bunch of these pages, there's telephone stuff which adds up to be significant. Is that just what it costs for phone lines in the public safety building? It's like
Yes, so, yeah, this is, there's a handful of telecommunication ports that are within that building, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I could touch on public utilities. I
Might
haven't
as
been able
well.
to do this. Would that be all right?
On utilities, for
Yeah.
sure.
So we own our streetlights, and we're responsible for maintaining them. So those are the electricity for the streetlights and the maintenance. hydrants is actually a fire protection fee, which is assessed by Maine Water. And it's something that is required by the Public Utilities Commission. So this $215,000 has gone through the rate setting process and is part of the rates that the PUC has agreed upon. And we don't have any choice but to pay it. And it's based on a calculation that has to do with the increased cost of maintaining pipes at a size that are sufficient for fire flow as opposed for just potable water. And at one point, I knew how to do the bell curve, and I haven't had to do it in so long that I couldn't regurgitate that at this point.
So I feel compelled to channel my inner Daryl Fournier. He used to bring up every now and again, because he was very attuned to this, there were some hydrants that weren't functioning at a certain point, and I believe we were going to go back and ask for sort of a credit. Do you know if that ever happened?
So I don't know if it ever happened. I know that I can look into that. Jessica and I can look into that. In my experience, the fire protection fee is often more of a function of 30% of the operating cost for the division, simply because once you start doing the calculation on a per hydrant basis, it usually exceeds 30%, and 30% is the max. But we can look into that. This is the first I've heard about it.
Not entirely unrelated to that, just on the public utilities page, we have both the electricity for the streetlights and then the light maintenance. We don't have hydrant maintenance. Who is responsible for testing and maintaining? Is that Maine Water or is that us? Okay.
If we wanted more information about fire flows, what Bob and I found out earlier this year is that they would be more than happy to kind of help facilitate that, but they don't do that information. But in terms of flushing hydrants to make sure that the water stays potable and within the parameters, if a hydrant breaks, that kind of thing, that is all Maine Rural Water. It's all-inclusive service, so there you go.
Wasn't there some issue about clearing the snow as well?
Yes, we had that discussion.
You're on that, okay.
We had that discussion, and Maine Water was really receptive to Bob's suggestions for what might make that work better for us. And so Peter, the newer superintendent, I think if we don't get what we want this coming winter, is going to be receptive in seeing maybe, having us describe better what we need.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the next couple workshops and what we can expect for?
Sure.
Before we do that, I just have a question back on rescue. I know we were talking about overtime, but there's a significant decrease in professional salary there, and I don't know if we addressed that at the top of the rescue page.
You're looking at the professional salary for fire?
For rescue.
Oh, for rescue, sorry. I think if you do a quick, let me just get there to make sure. If you do a quick comparison, it's working on trying to realign, as I was talking about, the wages between the disparity between the wages of whether someone's assigned to fire or rescue in the system. So some of that is the movement, and some of that is just by nature of retirement and new hire of where they're at in the pay scale.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Makes sense.
So we have our next, so Jessica is leaving us to go get educated further on our financial software system. But she'll be back on the 20th for a workshop, and then another one, we have a standalone workshop scheduled for the 22nd. ultimately, the council gets to tell me what it wants, but barring feedback, I would have Earl and Neil ask them to come to the meeting on the 20th. So that gets us through Public Works and Winslow Park, which I think then really leaves kind of the scattershot of human services and committees and things like that that we could look at on the 20th, along with any other kind of questions you might have. Allow for, I think, more discussion on the 20th and less presentation, if that works for you.
Does the Public Works, are you including the town engineer section under
Yes.
that as well?
Yep. Even though that right now is kind of handled out of my office, but we did planning already. Yep. You just knew Kyle was it was watching right now. Yep.
That works good for me. That sounds good.
Does that work okay? All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Jessica.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to those who are here to support. All right, so now we are moving on to the Housing Task Force recommendation number 8, update. What's coming back? He's right there.
Keeping you busy, Brett. Yeah. Learn how town does his job here a little bit. Thank God he's
Around. All right, so I'm going to do my best to present some findings. Yeah, it's not about ducks.
Play on your PowerPoint.
There we go, just like that. Thanks, Tom. All right, so I missed the April 7th council workshop with the Housing Task Force, but I've had the opportunity to sort of be a member of that for a couple of years and follow the evolution. But I think I've got a pretty good idea of what the discussion was. Before we get into number 8, real quickly for the public, the Freeport Ad Hoc Housing Task Force has been around for 2 years, 18 months?
18 months.
18 months. The goal really is around increasing the supply of all types of housing units, intentional use of available planning strategies, policy updates, zoning improvements, and funding and incentives to advance housing as a public good in Freeport. We've got a couple of residents, planning board members, town council, Councilor Egan, Matt Peters from the Housing Trust, who we heard from tonight, and then some staff have been supporting. And there were recommendations that were shared on April 7th, including number 8, which has to do with directing the town to actively pursue a housing project through a sketch design process, site ID, location, typology, whether it's rental or ownership, what type of housing we want to see, and then establish and engage in a permit process for the project. And then once approved at PRB, invite developers to assume the permitted site project and then execute on a plan that reflects exactly what the community is looking for. The pre-permit specifics are designed, specified, and written by a small work group that holds several...
It's breaking up just a little bit.
Okay. Several public input sessions, and then creates a housing project application by the town of Freeport. And the intent here really is to create some visible progress on more housing downtown. So that's number 8. Overview. So I was tasked with estimating the costs and timeline for this to give you folks some context and some data to plan around. And so we put together 2 options. One, a town-led process from site selection through project design and approvals, and then 2, town developer collaboration via a request for qualifications a little bit earlier in that process. Some context, as we talked about a little bit tonight, there's a lot going on in this end. The town's invested a lot of resources to support housing. The comprehensive plan update is hopefully nearing completion. Has some great recommendations and community consensus embedded in it around housing. The design review ordinance overhaul is underway. The town's exempted multifamily projects from subdivision, so that's a good streamlined move. Kyle, you heard from Kyle tonight, the planner, about site plan process improvements, which he'll be discussing with the planning board tomorrow night, initiating that. We heard about the PPI with the development focus in the dog bone geography, and then we've talked about TIF district renewals and creation of a TOD TIF district to support housing development and other investments. So a lot going on. It's a great time to have this discussion. And so real quickly, the town-led development process, the way I thought about it was really a series of 5 steps. We would want to reach out to property owners and have a really transparent process about the fact that the town's looking to secure a site. And that way it's transparent, it's equitable, and we're fair to all the residents who have a stake in the community. That leads to due diligence. So once there's a site that's been selected, we'd want to make sure that the title is relatively clear, that there's no big issues with that. Environmental liability, so doing environmental assessments to make sure that the historical uses in the past haven't resulted in any kind of contamination, and then understanding what that would be in the event that we move forward. And then also sensitive environmental resources like wetlands and slopes and stuff that would prohibit development. So reaching out to property owners, securing a site, doing due diligence, and then a design process. So what would the community like to see on that site? Would it be ownership units? Would it be multifamily? Would it be condos? Large scale, small scale, multifamily? What's that look like? And what's the market that we want to support? Would it be small studios for young professionals who are getting out of college and looking to move into Freeport? Is it an aging in place play where we're looking to create units to downsize for elders in the community? And then once that's sort of worked through, I think you could envision some workshops, some architectural renderings, some discussion. And then once there's some consensus on that, move into the PRB and going through that process, followed by, once approvals and entitlements are obtained, then putting it out to the market. And so here's some high-level costs that we've put together. So the property owner outreach and site control, staff hours and budget is how we looked at this. What's the staff support that would be required, and then how much funding would be necessary, and then how long would this take? So we looked at mapping this out, doing an outreach, doing a mailer, making sure that we're engaging with property owners. It would probably involve some interviews, some kind of committee selection. We came up with 177 hours to do that outreach and manage that process, and a budget of about $9,500, which would include mailers and other resources to make sure that we're getting the word out and we're being fair and equitable in this. That process anticipate to be a few months to get that going. Due diligence, another 40 hours. This would largely be led by consultants, right? So we would be probably having some legal assistance on the attorney, rather on the title. Environmental assessments are a specialized project that a geologist would lead. That's about $10,000, and then a simple site survey to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Yeah, delineate wetlands and do some of that stuff. So about 10 weeks on that, and then design with community input. So again, outreach to the community, having an architect and a civil engineer that could work on site stuff, that could develop practical renderings, host a meeting or two, get some input, and then fine-tune those over time. Anticipate that would take a few months, and about 65 hours of staff time to sort of manage the outreach for the community as well as manage the consultants to put that work together. Going through the project review board, we're looking at that again largely being consultant-led, with a budget of about $55,000. I've got a pretty massive Gantt chart that we can look at some point, but just in the interest of time and visibility and not needing a microscope. So that's the background. kind of map that out, and those lines are mapped to budget items. Yeah, it's hard to read, so that's why I'm summarizing it here, but there's more detail for anybody who'd like to see it. Yeah, thanks. I got some other copies too that we can bring. And so that PRB process, again, would be a few months depending on, some of the issues that Kyle identified tonight, and site walks and input and follow-up, and largely the most expensive part of the process. And also to keep in mind that if the town wants to go down this road, I think you could almost think of each of these steps, outreach to the community, due diligence, design, and then project review board, as at the end of that, it's almost like a gate or an off-ramp. So if we feel like we've come along far enough that we have something that we could share with the market, that might be the off-ramp, and maybe at that point, that's something that we start to shop around. We could also look at that as a gateway and say, okay, we've spent 10 grand and we've done a bunch of outreach to the community to identify a parcel, and we think we've learned as much as we are going to learn and as much as we want to learn, and so we're just going to call it at that point. You can see that we're going to continue to add value, hopefully, to this process as we invest resources, and so there may be a good time to call it a win and move on to the next project, or to say we've learned as much as we can. So it's not the idea that if you wanted to go down this road that you necessarily have to commit to the whole process or the whole budget. But that's kind of the ballpark of how we thought about it, with some input from the development community. So that's the town-led option for further discussion and questions. And then looking at it from a little bit different perspective around reaching out to the development community earlier on with an RFQ, a request for qualifications, not a request for proposals, which would require a fair amount of work to respond to and to understand, but a request for qualifications, which could be a relatively simple submission that shows the track record, shows projects they've done in the past, shows their fiscal capacity to do a project, and therefore, by having a lower bar to respond to that request, the odds are you're going to get a bigger response because it's easier to respond to. So that's the idea with an RFQ. And then another key point is this approach that I'm about to share with you, and that is down here, is really arguably designed around the PPI that we talked about tonight too, and those steps, because we're going to be talking about with the PPI, part of that is to do a build-out analysis within 1,000 feet of Route 1. So we'll have a pretty good sense, that's initial site, desktop due diligence, where are the footprints to develop? Where can we not develop? So there'll be some good intelligence coming out of that, as well as an understanding of the infrastructure that it would need to serve that area. That's part of this PPI project as well. So it leverages the PPI project. I think the second step is really to define what's our value add here. What do we bring to the table? How do we help solve a gap that reduces a barrier that makes a project happen? And so I think of that as infrastructure support. If a project needs a sidewalk, needs a sewer line amended to it, needs some other type of infrastructure, we can do that. We've seen an example tonight of financial support with a TIF. There's also the possibility within the TIF districts that we've talked about, particularly the renewal of the expiring districts. Those revenues by state statute have to be allocated towards either TOD investments or towards affordable housing. And that could be an affordable housing grant program or some kind of recyclable pool of resources that we can continue to allocate. That's one example of financial support that we could offer. And then some sort of a way to, as Kyle and the planning board thinks about ways to expedite permitting for projects that we really want to see. In the right areas on infrastructure, we could look at policies that speed this process up, which is time and money that developers would save that would reduce barriers. So after we understand, what's developable, we've done our outreach to the community to understand property owners who might be interested in a more informal process than, looking to secure sites. Then we define really what's our package that we want to put into this. And then we sort of articulate that within the RFQ. And we basically say, hey, the town of Freeport has put all this work in, downtown vision, comprehensive plan, dog bone, policy updates, design review, all this great work. We want somebody here. And we've got a pretty good sense of where we think that this could go. And as a result of that, for the right project that we would go through a process to define, then we'll offer these type of supports under the right conditions. And so we offer that carrot. That's our value add. So instead of maybe spending resources in leading a process on one site, we think about how we package this up for many sites and many projects. And then we develop a request for qualifications with a committee. We want to make sure that we've got the right kind of viewpoints. You could see FEDC being on there. You could see some input from the chamber and making sure that the RFQ that we're putting out is going to hit the market in a way that they're going to want to respond to. So that really, then we do the RFQ and we find a partner. And instead of the town going through the design process, doing the charrette, determining what the end market user is, we rely on the private sector expertise to fill that role in partnership with the town within a development path. That's the idea there. So again, this budget, it's a little more staff time because we're going to be relying less on consultants, more on PPI resources. So that's a little bit of a trade-off on staff time with this approach. But the budget is because, again, we're going to be relying more on existing flow of work that we're already engaged in, less expensive. But at the end of the day, assuming the best case scenario that these flow, it's roughly the same amount of time, to get from here to there. Part of that is the RFQ process is baked around the PPI, and that has a work plan that's going to take a series of months to do. So we won't have the coordinated development design or the build-out analysis until the fall. So that's a starting point for some of this work. But ultimately, I think you could look at additional staff time with the RFQ, less resources, arguably less risk over time, and then here's how that looks for the town-led process. So that's what I came up with from a cost and timeline standpoint, based on some conversations and some input from others who have done this. And I turn it over for questions.
Go back to your first slide. No, sorry. Maybe it was go down. Right there. That's the problem. 349 hours, $125,000 for anyone to build in this town, and they haven't built anything. That's the number we've got to get down. I'm not for this project because I don't think the town should be a developer. I don't think the town should be contracting. That's not our job. Also, we have to change things. I know this is to jumpstart the building in this town, but until we change those numbers, it's not. It's like you run out of gas, you leave your lights on, you run the battery down. Someone goes by, hey, I can help you jump your battery, but you're not going anywhere until you get gas. So I like the idea of kind of pursuing this as an academic exercise and see where we can reduce those costs, because if everyone's got to put $125,000 into a house that they're building for $200,000, now you're at $325,000.
But Chip, somebody building a house isn't going to need to do the property owner outreach and site control, and they're not going to have to put, I get what you're saying, and I'm not saying there's not room for improvement, but it's kind of an apples to oranges. I think the $55,000 to go through project review board is a legit cost. If it's too high, then there are things that we can do policy-wise to start bringing that down a little bit. But it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, because what you're seeing there is a public sector entity that needs to be transparent, trying to have a community conversation with 8,800 people about how to do this. But that's what drives a lot of that cost. I don't think a person normally is putting $125,000 into getting even a multifamily approved at that
There's a
level.
lot of it, though. I mean, maybe, because we still do the community outreach, we got to tell everybody that this is going in. So it's not necessarily saying, what do you want? It's saying, this is what I'm going to put in. So the cost may not be totally 100% what a builder goes through, but it's going to be close to that number.
So this is based on some pre-staff work. A developer would come in, meet
Yep.
with the planning staff, get input from almost like the staff review board, right? Public services, police, fire, make sure that what they're talking about is going to meet the standard. Sorry, guys, I get into the conversation, I forget about some of these things. So that 55,000 is based on meeting with staff and then 2 PRB meetings and bringing your technical experts to those PRB meetings. So to the point that you made earlier, how do we get that number down? If it's the right project, can we get to 1 meeting? But the other side of this is that this is based on 2 meetings, and what we've seen is that sometimes they go 3.
3 or 4 meetings, right? And the developers paying the same salaries as we are, probably maybe a little bit more. So all I'm saying is that number needs to come down, and even though this may not be the right number, and the speed, I mean, how long, 22 Main Street was out there for a whole year, and then people came in and said, well, we didn't know this project was going on, and then it got shot down after you had a permit. That needs to change, and that's why people are going to be here. The other thing I don't like about this is that it says, hey, people come in, but you need the town to help you get through this process. There's no way you're gonna be able to do this without the town kind of picking what you want, picking what we want to do. So I love the exercise. Thank you for all the work that went into that. It's beautiful. But there's so many things that I see on this that I just don't agree with.
I have a couple questions, Brett. First of all, just you mentioned the TIF and the renewal of the TIF. Could either be TOD or affordable housing, and you said there were some options for what that affordable housing might look like. I'm wondering if one of those options is not just a directly affordable housing development like we just saw with Freeport Housing Trust, but something that is more of a structured mixed income development where there's a certain percentage of units in a development, and that if a developer comes in and they want to do that, then that pool of money, as you said, could go towards supporting that development. Is that one of the options?
It is, and I think, we've all seen the dog one, so you can kind of visualize what that is, 1,000 feet from Route 1. I mean, I think that this is part of the due diligence that I think the town manager mentioned last meeting with Bernstein and Schur to flesh out some of these things. But my understanding is that that's definitely eligible. In addition to, you could build infrastructure out to an affordable housing project that happens to go past developable land that doesn't necessarily, have to, there's a straight face test that you have to meet. But I think that the short answer is that there's a fair amount of flexibility, and staff is committed to fleshing out the full range of that flexibility so that as the town goes down this road, we understand clearly what our options are and how we can leverage the resources that we have to the fullest extent. So the answer, I'm pretty confident, is yes, in addition to other mechanisms that we could do to leverage affordable housing programs to move forward.
Thank you. And my other question, in sort of scenario 2, which is the RFQ proposal, one of the things I really appreciate about that is the tie-in with the Route 1 development. One of the things we talked about a lot in interviewing those firms was how do we get to people actually developing these properties? Because, as opposed to the downtown vision, which was a lot of community input and what we'd like it to see, but it was entirely then left to private developers to try to make those things a reality. We talked with folks about how they could do some of what you talked about, that analysis of what are the buildable areas, where that makes sense. So I think that makes a lot of sense. My question is, between these two proposals, could you not do some hybrid where we start with that one, the RFQ, and then if you get to where there are these multiple building possibilities, could the town then step in and say, well, we've done this analysis, here's one that we think might be particularly eligible for the town to do that helpful?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the key thing that if I were in your seat that I would focus on, back to where we started, is what's the key gap that the town can fill that the private sector can't? Because I think towns are good at infrastructure. They build roads, they plow streets. Towns are good at managing processes and complying with state law. It's fairly rare for towns to develop housing projects as the lead developer. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, doesn't mean it couldn't be done. But I think that, to answer your question, I see an all the above strategy. And part of the conversation should be the sequence of these. And I think the PPI, the second one, whether we do a formal RFQ or not, I think it's critical that we determine collectively what the value add that we want to offer is and what the package that we would consider extending. Because that's almost, we're going to have a chance to build some buzz with the PPI, I think, and we're going to have a chance to have this tool to go out to folks and say, this is what we're working on, and here's the opportunity, and we've got this infrastructure plan to enable and unlock this. And that's just a really nice tool to go out and say, hey, we're making progress here in Freeport. So I think you could do all the above, and I think, I'm going to advocate that whether or how or if this moves forward, that we spend some time on looking at that infrastructure package, the TIF package, and really making sure that everybody's aligned on that. And it's less of a project by project debate. It's more of, hey, you fit this criteria, you're creating a sound public benefit. We know that construction costs are high, materials are unpredictable, labor is under a lot of stress, cost is going to continue to be an issue, and so if we want housing, it's arguably not a question of, whether we invest, it's how we invest. It's going to have to happen, and so I think it could be all the above. But regardless of that, I think, we got to determine how we want to support folks from a value add package.
I think you're right. I like what resonates with me is we need an understanding of the landscape, right? We need to know what are the developable lots and then what they would need to be marketable to someone, and what role the town can play in getting them to a place where a developer could take it and run with it. Like, what's the sweetener? What's the thing that's going to put the package over the top so that, just like in the presentation from earlier, when Matt was saying, well, because of all these things, we had to put in X amount of money. And the only reason we were able to put in that money as Freeport Housing Trust is because of the TIF. Like, those are the things we need to know so we can incentivize development. I agree with Chip. I don't want to be in the business of going A to Z on a project. That doesn't seem right to me. We don't have the right expertise. But we need to know what we have for potential options and what role the town can play in it. And I think until we have a better understanding of that, we can't do anything. But just my thought.
I just want to remind us of the context of where number 8 came from, the recommendations from the Housing Committee. And it was actually an imported idea that several of us had heard about another community, a bigger city. Bangor took the same route, and they had a few more tools in the toolbox. They owned a piece of land already, and they had a little bit of ARPA money where they could spend on some design work, but they did essentially the route that Brett outlined in number one, and they went all the way through a process, and then they went and found a developer to build this and this and this, and they're actually underway with it now. So the context of number 8 is because nothing is coming forward. And to get to your question about we need to know where the developable parcels are, we could, in a week or 5 days or less, we could have 9 developers sitting here who would give us a long list of where the developable parcels are in Freeport. They're open, they're on the market, there's a lot of parking lots. So that those sites are identified, and there's nothing happening. So the purpose or the context of number 8 was to crack that, whatever it is, that's inertia, that's holding things back. And maybe, and so that this layout here is a really excellent example of Brett responding to, okay, this is what a committee is putting forward, and the council gave a general nod to let's take an exploration of this, and Brett's done an excellent job of actually how it works. And I would agree that number 2 probably makes much better sense and is lower risk and is certainly much less money. But the purpose and the context of the recommendation of where this came from is because nothing is happening. And so I totally agree with you, Chip. The town should not be doing this. Particularly a small town should not be doing this. But the development community isn't. And there's sites available, there's resources available, and we have to go out and basically knock down those obstacles in the process so that we can make something happen.
So my thought is you are doing a great job segueing us right into our executive session, if you would like.
I do have one other point, is that the town, has anyone asked why they're not building? We've had projects, we've had permits that are out. Why aren't they going forward?
There isn't, well, my perspective is there's not one reason. There's maybe about 5. Certainly, our process is one of them. Resources is another. Market uncertainty and market risk is another. And frankly, what works is larger, bigger, simpler, maybe less attractive looking buildings. And there's a long record in the newspaper over the past 12 months of what happens to those projects. And they all get tanked.
Yeah, I
So
get
the
it.
developer community is looking to have some insulation on that.
Right, I don't see how
That's
this
the
will do that, though. This doesn't do that.
So I think,
It does if we can identify, we
Where
can come
the
to the table.
problem is.
Well, no, we can come to
So-
the table with infrastructure support for connectivity.
Can I
and things
can I
like
ask 2 relatively simple questions, I think? I'd love to understand path 2 a little bit more, because it's still a little vague for me, but I can follow up with you separately. If we do path 1 and we come up with something that's permitted and ready to go, do we then sell that to a developer or give it to a developer?
Sell it.
We sell it, so we get some of that $125,000 back.
Probably a then some.
Yeah, okay, right, because we took the risk out. The second question I have is if, there's always rumors about this project's in the works, that project's in the works. If there are projects that come forward, housing projects downtown, that meet the needs of what we're all trying to do, and that happens organically in the next year and a half, does that change the calculus? And it's great, we don't need to do this anymore, market solved the problem? Okay.
I wouldn't say solve the problem, but it's
Right.
starting
But
to
you don't
solve
need the
or addressing
catalyst,
problem.
because that,
Right.
okay. That's,
all right, I think we're ready to enter our executive session for this item. So be it ordered that the town council enter into an executive session pursuant to 1 MRS subsection 4056C regarding an economic development project.
Second.
All right,
Pick who got that.
I have to roll call. Counselor Egan?
Yes.
Counselor Pillsbury?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence?
Yes.
Counselor Pilch?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Is he still there?
He is.
He's there, thumbs up.
You gotta say it, I think.
Yes.
Yep. Counselor Benoit votes yes. All right, we're in an executive session.